Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Games Hitting My Table. In this series I take a look at all of the games that are not new to me that I've played over the last couple of weeks. This episode is covering the first half of December 2022. Before I get started on the games I've been playing, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started. And I'm going to start with a two-player game of Teletum. So Teletum was actually my favourite game that I played last month. Really impressed by this latest game from Board & Dice of the T series by Tascini and Luciani. So this is a proper, I'd even call it streamlined dice drafter, as you are of course drafting these dice. Those dice are going to give you resources depending on the pip value, but it's also going to show you the action you can take. And I love the way that that contrasts with each other, because the more resources you get, the weaker action you have, and the fewer resources you get, the stronger action you have. And essentially you are traveling around this map, you are establishing these trade posts and these columns, which allows you to build churches, all to get points. Tons of different ways to get points here. And there's a lot of pressure to get to the right place at the right time to be eligible to score these scoring criteria. So I like the way that works. I had a very successful game of this one, I'm not going to lie, where I did kind of steamroll my opponent, but it just seemed to work out in my favour. It really did fall at my feet. And I really got a good balance of everything done. Got those contracts done. I believe some of the criteria was getting contracts done, especially later in the game. So it all kind of came together for me. But I love the way this game works. And it's nice the fact that, even when maybe somebody doesn't have the most successful of games, they still leave it feeling that it's a really good design and they enjoyed their play regardless. So yeah, going from strength to strength for me, that is Teletum. Also played a two-player game of Acropolis. Another 2022 release here, one that I've been raving about for quite a few months now, consistently getting to the table. Now this is a family weight tile placement game, very puzzly in its nature, as you are laying these kind of three connected hexes tiles together, and all of these different colours of the buildings, they score in different ways, but you need to make sure you're getting these star symbols as well, because they're going to be the multipliers for those scoring criteria. Think of something like King Domino, but I love the 3D aspect of this game, as you can lay tiles on top of other tiles and increase your multipliers that way as well. And playing a two-player game, I decided to include all the tiles, which is it's an official variant on the game. And maybe that was a mistake, because I think there's maybe too many tiles when you're playing with two players and you include all of them. Whereas if you play with 4 or 3 players, it's a bit more it's a bit more contained. I think the scores went completely off the rails here, because I ended up getting like tons of multipliers by one of the tile types. I think my opponent got none of them, so I was ending up scoring like 100, 150 points for one of the different criteria, which is insane really. But yeah, I probably won't do that again for 2 players, but I still tend to play with all the tiles in a 3 or 4 player game. But if you haven't tried this one out, definitely do it if you want a kind of a puzzly family weight game here. It's really good, and it plays in about 25 minutes, which is fantastic. Also played a few two-player games actually. So the first one is Seven Wonders Duel. Been a firm favourite of mine for around a year now or so. So I've kind of cherry-picked bits from one of the expansions. I've only played the Pantheon expansion. I have still got the Agora expansion on my shelf of shame. And I've decided to take all the God powers out, but I do like the kind of guild cards replacements from the final round, and I've also included like the new progress tokens and things like that. But this is one of the best two-player games ever. It's a great drafter, as you're again drafting these cards, building up a kind of infrastructure of resources, building better and better cards as you go. This was a really weird flow of a game, because it seemed like all the basic resources were just going to my opponent, or they were taken out of the game, and it just did not flow very easily at all, meaning that the second and third ages were quite difficult to manage. But very fortunately, I managed to pick up one of the new progress tokens. It might be an old one, I'm not sure. The engineering one, where you can actually buy the cards with the prerequisites on them for a single coin, which is insane value. And that managed to really help me, and I nearly pulled back a victory considering how badly it was going. And I was just a few points behind considering how far behind I was. So that one really did nearly get me out of a tight corner, but not quite enough. But still, just an excellent game. Just absolutely fantastic. I know it's highly revered, and rightly so. Speaking of great two-player games, we played a two-player game, of course, of Mandala. So this one I played with my brother. We haven't played it too much, actually, together. I played this game a ton, but normally with my mum. And, you know, I've always loved this game. I rave about it all the time. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, it's ranked extremely highly on my top 100. And it's just a piece of art, this game. I love the way it works. If you are a fan of two-player games and you want these kind of timeless, classic feeling games, this one is an essential. It's so good, and the fact this came out only 2-3 years ago is quite mind-blowing to me. So that is Mandala. You know, check out my content on it. I talk about it all the time. Also played another two-player one here with Shanghaian. So this is kind of more of a silly, luck-driven game where you're trying to collect these kind of pirate cards. And the way you do that is by rolling these dice, and then you're going to assign these dice to their kind of pit value in the column. So, you know, the 1s at this end and the 6s at the other end. And you're basically using those dice to control or gain influence over those characters. And once you've deployed all your dice, you're going to gain the characters accordingly. But if you control adjacent cards, then they're going to kind of bolster your influence as well. So they can actually help you kind of grab the majority over your opponent. And then I like the scoring criteria in this one. As if you, say I had, say, 5 value of yellows, my opponent has 3 values, I only score my opponent's value of them. So you want to be making sure that your victory margin is quite small, so at least you're getting something out of it. Whereas if you are really kind of, steamrolling your opponent and getting loads of one, and they only have a single card of the other one, you're only getting 1 point. So it's something you have to consider there. And just a nice little twist on the game. Very simple stuff, but I don't dislike it at all. That is Shanghaian. And talking about more obscure two-player games, I played a game of Martinique. So this is a weird like set collection and deduction game hybrid. As you have this big grid here, which is like a traditional pirate map. You're going to deploy all these tiles on these different squares. And then you're going to be moving your pieces around almost in an abstract manner, collecting the tiles as you go and trying to match these symbols on the side. And if you do that, you're going to get points. But you can also go for these maps, and these maps are going to have grid references on them, which is kind of the main aspect of the game. So you're trying to deduce down where the treasure is because there are 2 of these map tokens taken out of the game. So that's quite interesting, and basically when it gets to the game's end, as in you've run out of moves, you have the option, or you first go through the process of trying to deduce where that map is, and if you're correct, then the winner will win automatically. However, if nobody deduces where the map is, then it will go back to the points values. So I do like that kind of 2-tier scoring system. But to be honest, I've only played this a few times, and each time I've played it, the deduction factor has been quite clear on what to do. So I think just by pure chance, I managed to have some of the best tiles drawn, and it could only be like 3 options where it could possibly be for me. And bearing in mind, you have like 3 or 4 options to guess where it is. I knew what it was going to be. So it was going to be whether I was going to get it or my opponent was going to get it before me. But because I passed in a certain order, I was guaranteed to win it because, you get initiative based on how quickly you duck out of the round. But it's nice. I like the concept of it. I don't think it's a great one. It does have some rough edges, but I would happily play it. It's no big issue at all. So that is Martinique. We played a 3-player game of Cabo. So this is just a great memory game. Again, I've talked about it quite a lot on the channel. And funnily enough, over the last few games, we have this mechanism where you are trying to, you try not to go over 100 points, because as soon as you go over 100 points, that's going to trigger the end game. But one of my opponents, when you land on 100 points exactly, you kind of reverse your score back to 50 points, which is a good thing, a really good thing. And that happened just by pure happenstance, and that ended up giving my opponent the victory. So that's quite interesting. That's happened 2 games in a row for me now. But it's a really cool memory game as you're just trying to almost push your luck, trying to get the lowest combination of cards, and basically call the end of the round at the right time. If you do call it at the right time, then you're going to score nothing and your opponents are going to score points, which is not good for them. Or if you call it incorrectly, then you score double your value of points. So it does have this little push your luck aspect to it as well. But really nice game, way better than it should be. That is Cabo. On to the last couple now. We played a 3-player game of Alice's Garden. Definitely a hidden gem for me. Not really talked about too often. I don't think it's widely available outside of England, really. But this is a lovely polyomino style game, as you are placing these obviously polyomino tiles on this grid, and then all these polyomino tiles have different sections of squares on them, which all have different scoring criteria. So some of them might say, if you have 2 of these in a column, then you'll get 8 points. If you have these trees in a row, you want to have them as in the same row but as far apart as possible, or you want to have these chess pieces on the chessboard section of the board, and so on. And it's very puzzly. I like how quick it is. I like the almost like good frustration of the game as you're trying to draft these tiles and trying to obviously optimize the placement, but of course inevitably it's not going to go your way at all times, and you're going to be forced to play things suboptimally. But I have quite a good record with this one. I tend to do well at it. I don't know why, because I'm not generally good at these type of games, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it's a fantastic little filler game, and one of the best ones I've played over the last couple of years. Just a great traditional filler that's a lot of fun, very accessible but still very thinky. So that is Alice's Garden. And finally, last night we played a 3-player game of Vikings. So wow, this game is so good. Criminal that this game isn't more widely available. It's a Michael Kiesling classic. A tile placement game, but definitely one that feels very different to anything else, as you are placing these tiles on this personal board like this, and you're creating these islands. But these islands need to have like a left section, as many middle sections as you like, and then a kind of closing section. And then when you draft these tiles from this awesome wheel mechanism, where you're paying fees based on the orientation of this wheel, and you are drafting them hand in hand with these Viking tokens or these meeples. And if you draft them with the tile and you can immediately place it, you can do. But if you cannot place that meeple immediately, you can put them in the storage area, meaning you have to collect a different type of meeple in order to transport them to the tiles later. It's quite a restrictive game, but still very low rules overhead. Lots of cool little decisions here. You have to fight off these threats by getting these black Vikings. Money can be very tight in this game as well. And it's just a really punchy, fast game with good decisions. Plays in around 30 to 40 minutes. And to be honest, it is climbing up my ranks quite rapidly. This last play really did kind of cement to me thinking this game is fantastic. And it's gone up, a rating or 2 as well in terms of, what I rate it out of 10. So if you can't, or if you don't know about this game and you can find a copy, I highly, highly recommend you do. Extremely versatile. You can play this with, gateway gamers as well as, heavier gamers as well. It is just that good. So that is Vikings. So there we go, that is all the games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.